The man at table 9 hadn't touched his food. That alone was enough to make the entire staff of Lapis, the most exclusive Mediterranean restaurant in East London, hold their breath. Because the man at table 9 was Nasser Zakaria, and Nasser Zakaria did not waste time. He sat with his back to the wall, always the wall, his dark eyes scanning the room the way a hawk watches a field. 2 men flanked his booth. One was bald, thick-necked, wearing an earpiece. The other was leaner, quieter, more dangerous. Neither of them ate either. They weren't here for the food. Nasser was 43, Jordanian by blood, raised between Amman and Marseille, educated in the back rooms of shipping yards and the basements of men who never gave receipts. He ran the Zakaria Group, on paper, a logistics conglomerate spanning the eastern Mediterranean, on the Gulf, and 3 ports in West Africa. Off paper, it was the largest gray market freight operation in the region. Weapons didn't move through his ships. Drugs didn't either. What moved was debt, influence, leverage. He shipped the things that couldn't be named in contracts, but made governments function. He was feared, respected, and tonight he was furious. "This lamb," Nasser said, his voice low and controlled, the kind of quiet that made people lean in and sweat, was cooked by someone who has never seen a lamb alive. His accent was precise, British consonants wrapped around Arabic vowels, like a silk rope around a stone. The head waiter, a man named Philip, who had served diplomats and rock stars without flinching, felt his knees soften. "Sir, I can have the kitchen." "You can have the kitchen closed," Nasser said. And he placed his napkin on the table, not thrown, placed, which was worse. "I was told this establishment understood Mediterranean cuisine. I was misinformed." He stood up. When Nasser Zakaria stood up in a room, the geometry of the space changed. People unconsciously shifted. Conversations dropped to murmurs. His bodyguards rose in sync, buttoning their jackets. "Mr. Zakaria, please," Philip tried again, his voice cracking. "The chef would be honored to prepare." "The chef," Nasser interrupted, adjusting a single cufflink, "should be honored. I don't buy this building and turn it into a parking garage." He paused. "Actually, get me the owner's name." Philip went pale. "Sir, the owner is—" "I didn't ask for a story, I asked for a name." The room was a held breath, and then a voice, quiet, steady, female, came from somewhere near the service station. "Al-Saba Miftah al-Faraj Yosidi, Waltam Yustahil Fursa Thaniya." Patience is the key to relief, sir, and the food deserves a second chance. The words weren't in modern standard Arabic. They weren't in Egyptian or Levantine or Gulf dialect. They were in a specific, almost musical cadence, a southern Jordanian Bedouin register, the kind spoken in the villages south of Karak, near the edge of Wadi Araba. The kind spoken by old women around fires. The kind Nasser hadn't heard since he was 9 years old, sitting on his grandmother's lap in a stone house that no longer existed. Nasser froze. His right hand, which had been reaching for his coat, stopped mid-air. The bodyguards noticed. They exchanged a glance. In 7 years of service, they had never seen their boss freeze. He turned slowly, standing near the service station, holding a tray of clear dishes, was a woman in a black apron. In late 20s. Dark hair pulled back in a low ponytail, loose strands framing a face that was more tired than beautiful, though it was both. She had the kind of eyes that had seen too many late shifts and not enough sleep, brown and deep and unblinking. Her name tag read, Noor. "What did you say?" Nasser asked. His voice had changed. The corporate frost was gone. Something raw had replaced it. Philip lurched forward. "Sir, I apologize. She's new. She's only been here 2 weeks. I'll have her removed immediately." "If you touch her," Nasser said without looking at Philip, "I will remove you permanently." He took a step toward Noor. "Where did you learn that dialect?" Noor set the tray down carefully. Her hands were steady, but her pulse hammered in her throat. She hadn't planned to speak. Though the words had come out of her the way a reflex makes you catch a falling glass, without thought, without permission. "My grandmother," she said in English now, her accent London-born, Hackney-raised. "She was from a village near Tafila. She raised me until I was 12. What village? Ain al-Baida. Nasir's jaw tightened. A muscle in his cheek moved. Ain al-Baida was 11 kilometers from where he was born. It was a cluster of stone houses in a valley so remote that most maps didn't bother to name it. The people there spoke a dialect that linguists had documented only twice. "What is your grandmother's family name?" he asked. Noor hesitated. There was something dangerous in the question, not threatening. Dangerous the way standing at the edge of a cliff is dangerous. The answer could change gravity. "Habashne," she said. And Nasir sat back down. He didn't ask to sit. He didn't gesture to the bodyguards. He simply sat as if the name had cut the strings, holding him upright. "Bring me tea," he said. "Sit with me." Philip looked like he was watching a nature documentary about an event that shouldn't be possible. "Sir, the staff policy." "She is no longer staff," Nasser said. "She's my guest. Bring 2 teas. Sage, no sugar." Noor Hadid was 28, and she had been invisible for most of her life. Born in Hackney to a Jordanian mother and a father she never met, she grew up between 2 worlds and fully belonged to neither. Her mother, Rania, cleaned offices at night and slept through the day, leaving Noor in the care of her maternal grandmother, a woman named Faris, who spoke no English and treated the entire city of London as a temporary inconvenience she would tolerate until God called her home. Faris had raised Noor on stories, not children's stories, real ones, stories about blood feuds in the valleys south of Karak, about men who smuggled gold across the Jordanian border during the Ottoman collapse, about a family called Zakaria that had once owned the largest trading route between Aqaba and Damascus before the wars, before the betrayals, before a man named Masan Zakaria was murdered in his own warehouse by someone he trusted like a brother. Noor had listened the way children listen to thunder, not understanding the physics, but feeling the power. She grew up fast. She was gifted with languages, not just Arabic, but the specific micro-dialects her grandmother wove into bedtime conversations. By 16, she spoke English, Arabic, 3 dialects, French from a neighbor, and had begun teaching herself Farsi from library books. By 20, she had earned a scholarship to SOAS to study linguistics and translation. By 23, she was working for a small NGO translating witness testimonies from Syrian refugees. Then her grandmother died. Then her mother got sick, lupus, the kind that attacked kidneys slowly and bills quickly. The NGO lost its funding. Translation contracts dried up, and Noor, with a degree that made professors proud and landlords indifferent, found herself applying to restaurants. Lapis hired her because she spoke Arabic, and they occasionally had Gulf clients who preferred to order in their own language. She was a utility, a tool. She understood this. She had been a tool her entire life, useful, portable, and easy to put down when not needed. Until tonight, until she opened her mouth and stopped a storm. Nasser didn't drink the tea immediately. He held the glass in both hands, the way people from the villages held tea, cradling it, warming the palms, letting the sage scent rise. "Habashne," he said again, testing the name like a man pressing a bruise. "Your grandmother, was her name Fatima?" Noor's eyes widened. "You knew her?" "No, I knew of her family. The Habashne women were known in the valley. Healers, midwives." He paused. "My father used to say that when a Habashne woman told you something, you could bet your life on it. They didn't waste words." "She didn't," Noor agreed. "Yet she used to say that talking too much is the poor man's only expense." Nasser almost smiled. Almost. The muscles around his mouth moved, but years of discipline caught it before it surfaced. "Why are you working here?" he asked. "Because I eat food, and food costs money, and this place gives me money in exchange for carrying plates," Noor said flatly. The bodyguard on the left, the lean, dangerous one, coughed to hide something that might have been a laugh. Nasser glanced at him. The cough died immediately. "You have a linguistics degree," Nasser said. It wasn't a question. How do you know that? Because nobody speaks Wadi Araba dialect in London unless they studied it formally or were raised in it. You were raised in it and studied it. I can hear both, the grandmother's melody and the university's grammar. And they sit on top of each other like two different songs in the same key. Noor stared at him. She had spent her life being the one who noticed things about language. Nobody had ever noticed things about hers. I want to offer you a job, Nasir said. I have a job. You have a job carrying plates for a man who would have fired you 10 minutes ago for speaking to a customer. I'm offering you something different. What? I need a translator. Not a corporate one. I need someone who understands dialects, the ones that don't appear in textbooks, the ones that tell you where a man really comes from, not where he says he's from. That sounds like intelligence work. It sounds like linguistics, Nasir said. Whether it becomes intelligence depends on what we find. Find where? Nasir set down his tea. And he looked at her for a long moment, and Noor saw something behind the authority and the control, something that looked like a wound that had been dressed but never healed. I'm looking for someone, he said. A child, my brother's child. She was taken from us 8 years ago, and every lead I've followed has turned to ash. But 3 weeks ago, I received a recording, 30 seconds of audio, of a girl speaking a dialect I couldn't place. My linguist in Amman couldn't place it either. But it was close. Close to home. Close to the valley. He reached into his jacket and produced a phone. He pressed play. A child's voice filled the space between them. A girl, maybe 10 or 11, speaking quickly, nervously, in a dialect that was fractured. Pieces of Levantine Arabic mixed with something coastal, maybe North African, but with a melodic undertone that Noor's trained ear caught immediately. Her breath stopped. Play it again, she whispered. He did. Noor closed her eyes. She listened the way her grandmother had taught her to listen, not to the words, but to the music beneath them. Every dialect was a song. Every region had its own rhythm, and buried inside this girl's broken, patched-together speech was a ghost note, a single vowel shift, a specific way of pronouncing the letter quaf as a glottal stop that was unique to exactly one place on Earth. She's from the valley, Noor said, opening her eyes. Originally, but she's been moved multiple times. The coastal layer is Algerian, Oran, maybe Annaba. The syntax break suggests she was around Turkish speakers for a while. She's been passed through at least 3 countries. Nasser stared at her. My linguist spent 2 weeks on that recording. He gave me Egyptian, or Libyan, maybe Tunisian. Your linguist wasn't raised by a Habashne woman, Noor said. This time Nasser did smile. It was brief, sharp, and entirely involuntary, like a crack in a dam that sealed itself before the water rushed through. When can you start? He asked. I haven't said yes. You will. Why are you so sure? Because I heard the way you listened to that recording. That wasn't professional interest. That was something else. You recognized something. Noor said nothing. Because he was right. She had recognized something, not the dialect, something deeper, the fear in the girl's voice, and the specific kind of fear that comes from being in a place where nobody speaks your language and nobody cares. Noor had felt that fear in every school she'd ever attended. I'll need to hear everything, she said. From the beginning. Who is this child? Why was she taken? And who took her? Not here, Nasir said. He stood. The bodyguards materialized beside him. Tomorrow, my office, 9 a.m. He reached into his wallet and placed a business card on the table. Heavy stock, embossed, just a name and a phone number. Then he pulled out a stack of cash, far more than the meal, far more than a tip, and placed it beside his untouched plate. For the lamb, he said. It was terrible, but I'm glad I came. He walked out. The bodyguards followed. The room exhaled. Philip rushed over to Nar. What the hell did you say to him? Oh, what language was that? Are you insane? Noor picked up the business card. She turned it over in her fingers. I told him to be patient, she said. And he listened. The Zakaria Group occupied the top 4 floors of a glass tower in Canary Wharf. From the outside, it looked like every other financial building. Clean, cold, designed to make humans feel small. But inside Nasser's private floor, the aesthetic shifted. Hand-woven Jordanian rugs, a brass Dala coffee pot on a side table, calligraphy on the walls, not decorative but passages from pre-Islamic poetry, the old stuff, the desert stuff, about longing and exile and the weight of bloodlines. Noor arrived at 8:47 a.m. She was early because her mother always said that being on time was being late, and being late was being dead. Nasir was already there. He looked like he hadn't slept. He wore a charcoal suit with no tie, and he was standing by the window, looking out at the Thames, the way generals look at battlefields. "Sit," he said. She sat. He didn't ease into it. He spoke the way he did everything, directly, precisely, leaving no room for misunderstanding. "My brother's name was Karim," Nasir said. "He was 6 years older than me. Smarter, kinder. Our father built the Zakaria Group from nothing. A single shipping route between Aqaba and Jeddah, running construction materials after the Gulf states started building. By the time I was born, we had 12 routes and a fleet of 43 vessels." He turned from the window. "Oh no, my father was murdered when I was 14. Shot in his warehouse in Marseille. The police called it a robbery. It wasn't. It was orchestrated by a man named Victor Salan." The name landed in the room like a dropped blade. Salan was my father's business partner. French-Lebanese. He handled the European side of operations. Ports in Marseille, logistics hubs in Rotterdam, banking relationships in Zurich. He was charming, educated. He wore beautiful suits and quoted Camus at dinner parties, and he had been embezzling from the company for a decade. When my father discovered it, Salan didn't run. He didn't negotiate. He had my father killed and immediately moved to seize control of the European assets. He had prepared, forged documents, bought judges, compromised port officials. Within 6 months, he controlled 60% of the company's revenue stream. Nasir sat down across from Noor. Karim fought him. Legally at first. Then through other means. Karim was not like me. He believed in systems, in courts, in justice. But when the courts failed, when Salan's lawyers made evidence disappear and witnesses relocate, Karim went underground. He gathered proof, real proof, recordings, financial trails, enough to destroy Salan. What happened to Karim? He disappeared, Nasir said. The word was flat, clinical, but his hands, clasped together on the desk, tightened until the knuckles whitened. 11 years ago, he was in Istanbul, meeting a source who had access to Salan's Swiss accounts. He checked into a hotel under a false name. By morning the room was empty. No body, no blood, no trace. "And you believe Salan?" "I don't believe. I know. Salan made Karim vanish, but before he disappeared, Karim did something that Salan didn't expect." Nasser opened a drawer and pulled out a worn manila folder. Karim had a daughter. He placed a photograph on the desk. It was old, slightly faded. A toddler, maybe 2 years old, sitting on a woman's lap. The woman had dark eyes and a guarded smile. The child was laughing, reaching for something outside the frame. "Her name is Yasmin," Nasir said. "She was born in Istanbul in 2015. Her mother was a woman named Dina Khoury, Palestinian, a journalist. They weren't married. Karim kept the relationship secret to protect them both. I didn't know Yasmin existed until 3 years after Karim disappeared, when Dina sent me a letter through a series of intermediaries so convoluted it took 4 months to reach me." "What did the letter say?" "That she was running. On that Salan had found out about Yasmin. That he understood what the child represented, not just Karim's blood, but Karim's claim. Under our family's trust structure, my father's original charter, the firstborn child of the firstborn son inherits controlling interest in the foundation that holds 41% of the Zakaria Group." Noor leaned forward. "Yasmin is the majority stakeholder. She's the only legitimate heir to the foundation. I control the operations. I built the empire back from what Salon stole. But the foundation, the original entity my father created, was locked. It can only be activated by blood succession, verified by 3 witnesses from the founding families, and a DNA match. Salon knows this. He's been searching for Yasmin for 8 years, not to protect her, to eliminate the claim. And Dina, in the mother. Nasir's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes shifted. A door closing. Dina was found dead in a hotel room in Tunis 6 years ago. Officially a heart attack. She was 31 and in perfect health. The room was very quiet. I have spent 8 years and more money than some countries' GDP trying to find Yasmin, Nasir said. Every trail goes cold. Salon has resources, not just money but connections in intelligence agencies, port authorities, immigration offices. He can make people appear and disappear from databases. He's done it before. But the recording, Naur said. The recording. Nasser picked up his phone. 3 weeks ago, one of my operatives in Algeria intercepted a phone call from a care home in Oran, a charity-run facility for displaced children. And the call was between a staff member and someone in Geneva, someone using a phone registered to a shell company I've linked to Salon's network. During the call, in the background, you can hear children, and one child, for approximately 30 seconds, is singing. Singing, Noor repeated. A lullaby. A specific lullaby. One that my grandmother sang. One from Ain al-Baida. Noor felt the room tilt. That's why you reacted to me. In the restaurant. I spoke the dialect of the villages where that lullaby comes from. I've been surrounded by people who speak Arabic my entire life, Nasir said. Corporate Arabic, diplomatic Arabic, the Arabic of boardrooms and lawyers. Nobody speaks the Arabic of home. When you opened your mouth in that restaurant, I heard my grandmother's voice for the first time in 34 years. He slid the folder across the desk. I need you to go to Oran. I need you to find this care home, find this child, and confirm, through the dialect, through the songs she knows, through whatever linguistic fingerprint she carries, whether she is Yasmin. Why me? You have operatives. You have resources. Because operatives carry guns and suspicion. They walk into a children's home and every door closes. I need someone who can walk in and speak to a child in the language of her grandmother. I need someone the child will trust. Noor looked at the photograph. The toddler's laughing face. The mother's guarded eyes. If she's there, Noor said slowly, and Salon has people watching that facility, which he does, and if his network made that call, then the moment I walk in asking questions, I'm a target. Yes. And you're telling me this because you deserve the truth. I won't lie to you. I've lied to enough people in my life, and it has cost me everything except the ability to recognize someone who doesn't deserve to be lied to. Noor stood up. She walked to the window. The Thames was gray and slow, carrying barges and history. How much does this pay? She asked. Name your figure. My mother's medical bills, all of them, past and future, and her flat. She's about to be evicted. A new lease, somewhere clean, with an elevator because she can't do stairs anymore. Done. And I want access to everything, every file, every operative's report, every dead end. I don't work in the dark. Done. And if I find Yasmin, when I find her, she doesn't become a chess piece. She's not a corporate asset. She's a 10-year-old girl who's been alone for most of her life. She gets protected first, used never. Nasser looked at her for a long time. My brother would have liked you, he said quietly. I hope so, Noor said, because I'm about to risk my life for his daughter. The flight to Oran took 3 hours from London, but Noor felt the distance in centuries, from the glass and money of Canary Wharf to the crumbling pastel buildings of Algeria's second city, where the Mediterranean crashed against a shoreline that smelled of diesel and jasmine and memory. She traveled under her own name, no cover story, no false identity. Nasir's head of security, the lean, inquiet bodyguard from the restaurant, whose name was Faris, had argued against this vehemently. If Salon's people are monitoring the facility, they'll flag any foreign woman asking questions, Faris had said. And if I show up with a fake passport and a cover story and they check, I'm done, Noor had replied. I'm a translator. That's what my papers say. That's what I am. I'm going to Oran to do linguistic fieldwork for a university project on displaced children's dialect preservation. It's boring enough to be true. Faris had looked at Nasir. Nasir had looked at Noor, and for the second time he'd almost smiled. Send her, he said. Give her a phone with a direct line to me. Nothing else. The care home was called Dar al-Amal, the House of Hope. It sat on a hill above the old port. It's a converted colonial villa with peeling yellow walls and a courtyard where children played between olive trees that had been planted before the French left. Noor arrived on a Tuesday morning. She wore linen trousers, a plain blouse, and carried a leather satchel with a notebook, a voice recorder, and the kind of academic credentials that made bureaucrats relax. The director was a woman named Madame Benzian, 60, iron-haired with the skeptical eyes of someone who had seen too many people arrive with promises and leave with nothing. You want to study how the children speak, Madame Benzian said, peering at Noor's university letter over reading glasses. Specifically, how displaced children retain or lose their home dialects, Noor said. It's for a comparative linguistics study. I'd be observing conversational patterns. A recording. With your permission and the children's consent. Short interviews. Nothing invasive. The children here have been through enough invasions, Madame Benzian said, but she signed the form. 1 week. You don't photograph faces. You don't use real names in your paper. And if any child says stop, you stop. Agreed. The first 2 days, Noor did exactly what she said she would. She sat in the courtyard, in the dining room, in the schoolroom, and she listened. She spoke to children in Arabic, in French, in the soft Algerian dialect she'd picked up from a neighbor in Hackney. She was patient. She was warm. She was genuinely interested. By the 3rd day, the children came to her. There were 41 of them, ages 4 to 16. Most were Algerian, from the south, from the conflict zones, and from families broken by poverty or violence. A few were Libyan. 2 were Syrian. And 1, a girl who sat apart from the others, who read books during playtime, who flinched when adults moved too quickly near her. 1 was different. Her name, according to the records, was Salma. Age listed as 10. Origin listed as unknown, found in Tunis, 2021. Noor noticed her on the first day, not because of anything visible, because of something audible. During lunch, the girl had whispered to herself while eating, a habit of lonely children, narrating their own actions to fill the silence. And in that whisper, Noor heard it. The ghost note, the vowel shift, the glottal stop on the qaf. It took every ounce of discipline Noor possessed not to go directly to the girl. Instead, she waited. She built trust with the other children first. She let Salma observe her from a distance, the way feral cats observe before they approach. On the 3rd afternoon, she sat on a bench near where Salma was reading and began humming. Not just any tune, a lullaby. The lullaby from Nasir's recording. A melody from the stone villages south of Karak, about a mother telling the wind to carry her voice to a child who was far away. Noor hummed it softly, as if to herself, as if she'd forgotten anyone was listening. She felt, rather than saw, the girl's head turn. A minute passed, then 2. Then a small, cautious voice said, in Arabic so broken and beautiful, it made Noor's chest ache. My mother used to sing that. Noor didn't look up immediately. She kept humming. Then she stopped, as if noticing the girl for the first time. You know this song? Noor asked gently. It's in the dialect of the valley. Salma's eyes went wide. Her book slipped from her fingers. Nobody in her entire remembered life had spoken to her in that sound. That specific music of language. It was the sound of a time before the running, before the strange homes and stranger faces, before she forgot what safe felt like. "Where did you learn that?" the girl whispered. "My grandmother taught me," Noor said. She was from a village in Jordan, a place with stone houses and olive trees and women who knew every star by name. Salma's lower lip trembled. She didn't cry. She was past the age where children cry freely. But her eyes filled with something larger than tears, a recognition so deep, it was almost genetic. "My mama was from a place like that," Salma said. "She told me before she went away." Naur's heart hammered, and she kept her voice even, her body still, the way you stay still when a frightened bird lands on your hand. "What did your mama tell you about that place?" Noor asked. "She said there was a house on a hill, and a tree in the yard that was older than God. And that one day, when it was safe, she would take me there." "Did she tell you the name of the village?" The girl shook her head. Then she stopped. Her brow furrowed. "She told me a word. She said it was the name, but I should never say it to anyone. She said it was a secret." "You don't have to tell me," Noor said. The girl looked at her for a long time. Something passed between them. Not information, not strategy, but something ancient and female and sure. "Ain al-Baida," the girl whispered. Noor closed her eyes. The world rearranged itself. She had found Yasmin. In that night, Noor called Nasir from the roof of her hotel, a concrete block 3 streets from the care home. The night air was warm and carried the sound of ships in the harbor. "It's her," Noor said. Silence on the line. Then a breath, controlled, deliberate, the breath of a man who had trained himself never to react. "How certain are you?" She knows the lullaby. She knows the village name. Her dialect markers match. The base layer is southern Jordanian, overlaid with Tunisian and Algerian acquisition patterns consistent with a child moved through those regions between ages 3 and 7. And Nasser. Noor paused. "She looks like the photograph, the one of her mother, the same eyes." More silence. Then, very quietly, "Is she safe?" "For now. The care home is legitimate. Madame Benzian runs it well. But there's a man. I've seen him twice. Sits in a car across the street. Different car each time. Same driver. He watches the entrance. Salan's people." "That's my assumption. They're not here to take her. They're here to make sure she stays. As long as she's a nameless orphan in an Algerian care home, she's neutralized. No identity, no claim, no threat." "How did they get her there?" "I don't have the full picture yet, but based on what Salma, Yasmin, told me, her mother moved them through Tunis, then into Algeria. At some point, the mother was taken. Yasmin said she went away, and someone brought Yasmin to Dar al-Amal with falsified intake papers. The director has no reason to suspect anything. As far as she knows, Salma is just another abandoned child." "We need to get her out," Nasir said. "Not yet. If we pull her now, with a surveillance team watching, Salan will know. He'll know you found her, and he'll escalate. We need the legal claim first, DNA verification, and we need to neutralize whoever is feeding Salan information from inside the system." "What do you suggest?" "I need more time with her. I need to map the full story. Where she's been, who moved her, what she remembers. Children remember more than we think, especially in language. Every word she uses is a breadcrumb. Give me 3 more days." "You have 2. I need 3. "Noor." His voice was edged. "Every day you're in that city, you're exposed. Salan has people in Algerian security services. If he identifies you, then I'll be a linguistics researcher who visited a care home. Nothing more. I'm not the threat, Nasser. The threat is what I carry out of here. And give me 3 days, and I'll carry out enough to bury him." The line was quiet. Then, 3 days. But Ferris lands in Oran tomorrow. He stays nearby. Non-negotiable. "Fine. But he doesn't come to the care home." "Agreed." She hung up. The harbor lights reflected on the water like shattered gold. On the roof, Noor sat in the dark and thought about a 10-year-old girl who had kept a secret for most of her life because her dead mother had told her to. The next 2 days were the most important of Noor's life, and they looked, from the outside, like nothing at all. She sat with Yasmin in the courtyard. They drew pictures. They played a language game Noor invented. She would say a word in one dialect, and Yasmin would say it in another, and they would laugh at the differences. Through the game, Noor mapped the child's linguistic history with the precision of an archaeologist brushing dust from a mosaic. Yasmin had been in Tunis until age 4. She remembered a yellow kitchen and a woman who smelled like jasmine. Her mother, she remembered a night when they left quickly, in a car with a man who spoke French. She remembered a boat. She remembered being sick. She remembered Algeria, first a city she described as loud and hot, Algiers, Noor guessed, then a smaller place by the sea, Oran. She remembered her mother being taken, not violently. It was subtle. A meeting, a car, a promise to return, and then the mother didn't return. And a different woman, stern, official, brought Yasmin to Dar al-Amal with a new name and a new birthday and instructions to forget everything. "But I didn't forget," Yasmin said. Her chin set with a stubbornness that reminded Noor with a jolt of Nasir. "Mama said never forget the song and never forget the village. She said someday someone would come who knew both." Noor's eyes burned. She blinked hard. "Someone came," Noor said. On the evening of the second day, Noor was leaving the care home when she noticed something wrong. The car across the street, the surveillance car, was empty. It had never been empty before, and there was a man standing at the corner pretending to look at his phone, who hadn't been there yesterday. A second man sat at the cafe across the square. He was reading a newspaper. In 2026, nobody read newspapers. They were closing in. Noor walked at a normal pace to her hotel, her pulse like a drum. She called Ferris. "2 new watchers," she said. "Positioned for triangulation, and they're tightening the perimeter." "I saw them," Ferris said. "He was somewhere nearby. She didn't know where and didn't ask." "Yeah, there's a third, black jacket, standing by the pharmacy. I think they identified your visits to the care home." "How fast can you get a car to the service alley behind my hotel?" 20 minutes. "Make it 15. I need to get something from the care home tonight, after it closes." "That's breaking and entering." "That's saving a child's life." 15 minutes, Ferris. What Noor needed wasn't Yasmin. Not yet. What she needed was the intake file, the falsified paperwork that had turned Yasmin Zakaria into Salma Nobody. Because that paperwork had a signature, and that signature would be a thread that, if pulled correctly, would unravel Victor Salon's entire operation. She went over the wall of the care home at 1 a.m. The wall was stone, old, and Noor was thin and motivated. The director's office was on the ground floor, and the lock was the kind that yielded to a credit card and patience. The file was in a cabinet labeled S. Salma, Intake 2021. Noor photographed every page, intake form, medical screening, social worker's report, signed by a Dr. Farid Belhaj from the Ministry of Social Affairs, Tunis office, a transfer document from a Tunisian children's shelter, and stapled to the back a note in French. Child is not to be released to any party without authorization from Geneva office. Contact Monsieur Renard. Geneva, Renard. Noor didn't know the name, but she knew Geneva meant Salon's network. This was the leash. This was how they kept Yasmin in place, a bureaucratic cage, invisible to anyone who wasn't looking. She was putting the file back when she heard the courtyard gate creak. She froze. Footsteps. Heavy, not a child's, not Madame Bensian's. Noor pressed herself against the wall behind the filing cabinet. The office door was ajar. Through the crack, she saw a flashlight beam sweep across the courtyard. The footsteps entered the building. They went upstairs, toward the dormitories, toward the children. Noor's blood went cold. They weren't tightening surveillance. They were moving. Someone had given an order. Tonight. She pulled out her phone and texted Faris. "They're inside, going upstairs. They're here for the girl." Faris replied in 3 seconds. "Coming. 4 minutes. 4 minutes. An eternity." Noor didn't wait. And she slipped out of the office and moved through the ground floor corridor toward the staircase. She could hear the footsteps above, 2 sets, maybe 3, professional, quiet, but not quiet enough for a building with old wooden floors. She reached the staircase and stopped. She could hear a voice, male, speaking French with an Algerian accent. 3rd room on the left, bed by the window. Grab her, sedate her, out through the roof access. They had the layout. They had a plan. This wasn't improvised. Noor looked around. The kitchen was to her right. She stepped inside. She grabbed the heaviest thing she could find, a cast-iron pot, and then she did the only thing she could think of. She screamed. Not a random scream. She screamed in Arabic, in the specific shrieking cadence of a village woman, raising an alarm. The Zagruda inverted, the sound that for centuries had meant danger, intruder, protect the children. The sound ripped through the building like a siren. Lights came on. Children woke up crying. Madame Benzian's voice came from upstairs. Who is there? What is happening? The footsteps above scattered. Noor heard cursing in French. A door slammed. The roof access. By the time Faris arrived, the men were gone. Madame Benzian was standing in the courtyard in her nightgown, holding a confused and frightened Salma by the hand, surrounded by children who had been woken by the sound of war. Noor stepped into the courtyard. She was shaking. The pot was still in her hand. Madame Benzian stared at her. You, the linguist. Well, what are you doing in my building at 1 in the morning? Noor set the pot down. She looked at Yasmin. The girl looked back at her with those enormous, knowing eyes. Saving her, Noor said. And I need to tell you everything. Victor Salan lived in a villa overlooking Lake Geneva. The villa had been built in 1923 by a Swiss banker who'd profited from both sides of the First World War, and Salan found the symmetry fitting. He was 61, lean, silver-haired, with the kind of face that aged well because it had never carried the weight of conscience. He received the call at 6:14 a.m., Geneva time. The extraction failed, the voice said. Someone was inside the facility. A woman. She raised an alarm. Salan sipped his espresso. Who? We're running her. British national. Arrived 5 days ago under academic credentials. SOAS. Linguistics. Linguistics, Salan repeated. He set the cup down. That's not a coincidence. Sir, Zakaria sent her. He's been searching for the girl for years. He found a linguist because he received the audio. Yes, I know about the intercepted call. I know everything that happens in that facility except, apparently, how to prevent a single woman from walking through the walls at night. The line was quiet. Find her name, Salan said. Find her connection to Zakaria. And find her before she gets the girl out of the country. If the child reaches British soil or Jordanian soil with a DNA test and that intake file, we are finished. The intake file? She was in the director's office. Assume she photographed everything. The Belhaj signature, the Geneva directive, all of it. That means she has the thread. If she's as smart as Zakaria thinks she is, she'll follow it. Orders. Salan looked out at the lake. The water was still as glass. The woman is a problem, he said. Solve it. But the child must not be harmed. If the child dies, the claim passes to Nasser directly under Jordanian inheritance law. The child needs to stay alive and stay invisible. Relocate her. Tonight. Use the Tunis route. And the director of the facility? She'll ask questions. Pay her or threaten her. Preferably both. I don't care about an Algerian civil servant's feelings. I care about my 41%. He hung up. He finished his espresso. He placed the cup in the sink. He always cleaned his own cups. It was a point of discipline, and walked to his study. On the wall hung a photograph, not framed, pinned casually, as if it were a reminder rather than a trophy. It showed 2 men at a port. One was Nasser's father, Hakim Zakaria, young and broad-shouldered, laughing. The other was Salan, also young, also laughing. They had been friends, genuinely. Salan had loved Hakim the way men love the friends of their youth, completely, irrationally, and with the certainty that it would last forever. But Hakim had been careless. He had trusted the wrong people, not Salon, but the Jordanian partners who whispered to Hakim that the European operations were a liability, that Salon was skimming. Hakim had believed them. He had confronted Salon. Not with lawyers. With accusations. In front of others. Publicly. The humiliation was absolute. Salon had tried to explain. He had begged. For the first and last time in his life, he had begged. And Hakim had turned his back. After that, the betrayal wasn't business. It was personal. And personal betrayals, Salon had learned, could only be resolved personally. He looked at the photograph. "You should have listened, old friend," he said softly. "We could have had everything." Then he went to his desk and began making calls. Noor had two advantages that Salon's people didn't expect. The first was Madame Benziane. When Noor told her the truth, all of it, from the falsified papers, to the surveillance car, to the men on the roof, the old woman didn't panic. She didn't disbelieve. She sat very still, looked at the intake file, and said, "I knew. I didn't know the details, but I knew something was wrong with this child's story. Children who are truly abandoned don't keep secrets the way she does. Abandoned children are open wounds. She was a locked box. Will you help me? I've spent my life protecting children from the consequences of men's greed. Tell me what you need." The second advantage was Faris. Nasser's bodyguard was more than muscle. He was former Jordanian intelligence, Mukabbarat, recruited by Nasser after a decade of service because Faris was the kind of man who could disappear in a crowd and reappear behind you. He had spent the night building an exit route that avoided every port, airport, and border checkpoint that Salon's network could monitor. "Overland," Faris said, spreading a map on the hood of a rental car at 4 a.m. "South from Oran, through the Saida province, then east toward the Tunisian border at a crossing point used by Tuareg traders. No cameras, minimal military presence. From there, on we fly out of Djerba on a charter. Nasir is sending the plane." "That's a 12-hour drive through the desert with a 10-year-old child," Noor said. "It's a 12-hour drive through the desert, or a 2-hour wait at Oran airport where Salon has people in customs." "Desert it is," Madame Benziane prepared Yasmin. She didn't tell her everything. The child was 10, and 10-year-olds don't need the full weight of geopolitics on their shoulders. She told her that a woman had come to take her somewhere safe. Somewhere her family was waiting. "What family?" Yasmin asked. She was sitting on her bed, her few possessions, 2 books, a plastic bracelet, a drawing she'd made of a house on a hill, packed in a cloth bag. Noor knelt in front of her. She spoke in the dialect of the valley. "Your father had a brother. His name is Nasir, and he has been looking for you since before you can remember. He has never stopped." "Is he a good man?" Noor thought about Nasir. About the controlled fury, the precision, the empire built on gray morality and iron will. About the photograph he kept in his desk drawer. About the way his voice broke, just slightly, when he said his brother's name. "He's a complicated man," Noor said honestly, "but he loves you. And in my experience, love and complication usually come together." Yasmin considered this with the seriousness of a Supreme Court justice. Then she nodded. "Okay, but I'm bringing my books." "You're bringing your books." They left at 5 a.m. Faris drove. Noor sat in the back with Yasmin. The girl fell asleep within the first hour, her head against Noor's shoulder, her small hand gripping the cloth bag. Noor watched the desert pass outside the window, ochre and endless, dotted with scrub brush and the occasional shepherd. She thought about her grandmother, who had walked a desert like this once, decades ago, carrying nothing but stories and the dialect of a village the world forgot. She thought about Dina Kouri, Yasmin's mother who had died in a Tunisian hotel room protecting a secret. She thought about Karim Zakaria, who had disappeared into a night in Istanbul and never came back. And she thought about Nasser, waiting in London, a man who had conquered an empire but couldn't save the only family he had left. Until now, the border crossing was tense but uneventful. Faris had contacts, the kind built over years of intelligence work and carefully placed favors. A Tuareg guide led them through a gap in the fence that had existed since the French colonial era and would probably exist until the sun consumed the earth. On the Tunisian side, a car was waiting. By noon, they were in Djerba. By 2 p.m., they were on a Gulf Stream heading north. Yasmin pressed her face to the airplane window. "I've never been on a plane," she said. "How do you like it?" Noor asked. "It's like being inside a bird." Nasser was waiting at the private terminal at London City Airport. He stood alone. No bodyguards. No entourage. He wore a dark coat over a white shirt, and he stood with his hands at his sides, and for the first time since Noor had met him, he looked uncertain. The plane taxied, the stairs descended. Faris came first, scanning the tarmac out of habit. Then Noor carrying the cloth bag. Then Yasmin. Atta the girl stopped at the top of the stairs. She looked at the man on the tarmac. She had never seen a photograph of him. She didn't know his face, but she knew, in the way that blood knows, in the way that dialect carries identity deeper than any passport, that this man was hers. Nasser looked at her, his composure, the fortress he had built around himself for 30 years, the control that had made him feared across 3 continents, all of it crumbled. Not dramatically, not with a roar or a collapse. It crumbled the way old walls crumble, quietly from the inside, brick by brick, until the light gets through. His eyes filled. He blinked once, twice, then he walked to the bottom of the stairs and knelt. "Yasmin," he said, his voice cracked on the second syllable. The girl walked down the stairs, one step at a time, in gripping the railing. She stopped in front of him. She studied his face the way she studied everything. Carefully, thoroughly, missing nothing. "You look like the man in my mother's photograph," she said in Arabic. Nasser's breath hitched. "Your mother had a photograph?" "She kept it in her shoe. She said it was the only safe place. It was a picture of 2 men standing by the sea. She said one was my father and one was my father's brother. Which one was your father?" "The one who was laughing. She said he always laughed." Nasser closed his eyes. A tear fell. He didn't wipe it. "He did," Nasser whispered. "He laughed at everything, even me, especially me." Yasmin reached out and placed her small hand on his cheek. The gesture was instinctive, ancient, a child comforting an adult, the way children have since the beginning of time. "Don't be sad," she said. "Mama said you would come. And you came." Nasser pulled her into his arms. He held her the way drowning men hold air, desperately, gratefully, with the understanding that everything before this moment had been survival, and everything after it might be life. Noor stood at the top of the stairs, watching. She didn't interfere. This wasn't her moment, but she was shaking, and her face was wet, and she understood, with the clarity of a woman who had spent her life translating other people's words, that some things couldn't be translated. Some things could only be felt. Faris stood beside her. He was looking away, jaw tight. "You're crying," Noor said. "I am not." "You're literally crying. It's the wind. We're inside a terminal. It's an indoor wind." The DNA test took 48 hours. And the results were unambiguous. Yasmin was Karim Zakaria's biological daughter. The match was 99.97%. Nasser's legal team, 14 lawyers across 3 jurisdictions, moved with the speed and precision of a military operation. Within a week, the following things happened. The Zakaria Family Foundation's trust charter was activated for the first time in 30 years. Yasmin was registered as the sole heir to the foundation's 41% stake in the Zakaria Group. A court in London granted Nasser emergency guardianship of Yasmin, pending a full hearing, and a file, thick, documented, irrefutable, was delivered to Interpol, the Swiss Federal Prosecutor's Office, and the Jordanian Attorney General simultaneously. The file contained the falsified intake documents from Dar al-Amal, traced through the signature of Dr. O. Farid Belhaj, who, under interrogation by Algerian authorities, confessed to being paid €50,000 by a Geneva-based intermediary to process the child. Financial records linking the Geneva intermediary, Monsieur Renard, to a shell company owned by Victor Salan. The intercepted phone call between the Oran facility and Salan's network, Noor's linguistic analysis proving Yasmin's origins, and, the final blow, a set of audio recordings that Nasir had spent a decade acquiring through channels he would never publicly acknowledge. The recordings were of Victor Salan speaking to a man in Istanbul the night Karim disappeared, discussing in specific and damning detail how to close the Karim problem. They did not use euphemisms. Salan had been too confident for euphemisms, and confidence, as Nasser had always known, and was the most expensive form of carelessness. Victor Salan was arrested at his Geneva villa on a Tuesday morning. He was eating breakfast, poached eggs, wheat toast, espresso. He always ate the same breakfast. Discipline. The Swiss police were polite. They always were. They read him his rights in French and German. He listened without expression. He asked for his lawyer. The lawyer came. The lawyer read the file. The lawyer went pale. "There's a recording," the lawyer said. "I assumed. It's very clear. I was younger, more careless. Victor, I have represented you for 22 years. In all that time I have helped you navigate complexity. But this is not complex. This is a recording of you ordering the abduction and murder of a man, the subsequent abduction of his child, and the assassination of the child's mother. This is not a legal problem. This is an ending." Salan looked out the window. The lake was there, as it always was, still as glass. "Tell Zakaria he wins," Salan said. "Tell him I said Hakim would be proud of him, even though it's not true. Hakim was never proud of either of us. That was the problem." The trial lasted 4 months. It was covered by every major news outlet in the world. The billionaire, the missing child, the waitress-turned-linguist who had found her by listening to the way she pronounced her vowels. Salan was convicted on 12 counts, including conspiracy to commit murder, kidnapping, fraud, and money laundering. He was sentenced to 30 years in a Swiss federal prison. He would die there. He knew this. He didn't appeal. Dr. Farid Belhaj received 8 years. Renard, whose real name was Claude Mercier, received 14. The men who had entered the care home in Oran were never identified. They had dissolved into the networks of the Mediterranean, as such men always do. The Zakaria group was restructured. The foundation's 41% was placed in a trust or managed by an independent board until Yasmin turned 21. Nasser retained operational control, but reduced his involvement, hiring a CEO, a woman named Leila Mansour, the first non-family member to lead the company, and stepping into an advisory role. He had spent his life building an empire. Now he wanted to build something smaller and harder, a family. 6 months after the trial, on a Saturday in late spring, Noor arrived at Nasser's home in Kensington. She was no longer a waitress, and she was no longer a freelance translator. She was officially the head of the Zakaria Foundation's new initiative, a program to identify and reunite displaced children with their families using linguistic analysis. The program was funded by the foundation and run in partnership with UNHCR. It was her idea. Nasser had merely written the check. The Kensington house was a Georgian townhouse, beautiful in the understated way that old money prefers. But inside, it had changed. When Noor had first visited months ago, it had been immaculate, sterile, a showroom for a man who didn't live anywhere because he lived everywhere. Now there were shoes by the door, small shoes, trainers with cartoon characters on them. A school bag hung on the banister. Drawings were taped to the refrigerator. A house on a hill, an olive tree. Then a woman with dark hair, a tall man with a stern face that had been given a smile in crayon. Yasmin was in the garden reading. She looked up when Noor came through the back door. "Noor!" She ran over, hugged her around the waist, then immediately pulled back. "I finished the book you gave me." The one about the girl who speaks to birds. It was good, but the ending was wrong. What was wrong with it? The girl goes home at the end, but she doesn't take the birds with her. What's the point of learning to speak to birds if you leave them behind? That, Noor said, is the best literary criticism I've ever heard. Nasser appeared in the doorway. He was wearing jeans and a white t-shirt. Noor had never seen him in jeans. He looked 10 years younger and slightly uncomfortable, like a wolf who'd been asked to wear pajamas. "Why, you're staring," he said. "You're wearing denim." "Yasmin bought them for me. She said my suits were depressing. I am told this is an insult." "It is. She's right." They walked through the garden, a narrow but lush London garden, walled in old brick, with climbing roses and a patch of herbs Nasir had planted himself. Mint, sage, za'atar, the herbs of home. At the far end, near the wall, a new tree had been planted, small, young, its silver-green leaves catching the afternoon light. "An olive tree," Noor said. Yasmin asked for one. She said her mother promised her a house with an olive tree. Also, I can't give her the house in Ain al-Baida. It doesn't exist anymore. But I can give her the tree. They stood looking at it. The tree was thin, fragile, absurdly optimistic in the London clay. "It won't grow here," Noor said. "The soil's wrong. The climate's wrong. It's going to struggle." "Most things worth growing struggle," Nasir said. He looked at her. "Stay for dinner." "You're cooking." "Yasmin is cooking. I'm supervising, which means I'm sitting in the kitchen being criticized by a 10-year-old. "I wouldn't miss it." They walked back toward the house. Nasir's hand brushed hers, not grasping, not holding, just brushing. A contact so light it might have been accidental, except that Nasir Zakaria didn't do anything accidentally. Noor didn't pull away. Inside, Yasmin was standing on a step stool, stirring something on the stove with the concentration of a bomb technician. "The rice is wrong," she announced. "What's wrong with it?" Nasir asked. "Everything. You bought the wrong kind, I told you. The long grain, not the short grain. In short grain is for sushi. I will fire my grocery shopper." "You are your grocery shopper," Noor laughed. The sound filled the kitchen, unexpected and warm, and both Nasir and Yasmin looked at her, and for a moment, just a moment, they were not a billionaire, a recovered orphan, and a former waitress. They were three people in a kitchen, arguing about rice, surrounded by the smell of cooking and the sound of someone laughing. It was the smallest thing and the most important. Noor left late. The night was warm for London, and she walked a few blocks before hailing a cab. Her phone buzzed. A text from Nasir. "The olive tree will grow. I'll make sure of it." She smiled. She typed back, "You can't bully a tree into growing." His reply, "Watch me." She put her phone away. She looked up at the London sky. Was starless and orange with light pollution. Nothing like the sky over Ain al-Baida, where her grandmother said you could see God's fingerprints in the stars. But it was her sky. And beneath it, in a Georgian townhouse in Kensington, a man was learning to be a father, a child was learning to be home, and an olive tree was reaching against all odds toward the light. Noor didn't save a billionaire that night in the restaurant. She saved a family. She saved a name. She saved the thread that connected a murdered father to a disappeared brother, to a hidden child, to a village that the world forgot. And in doing so, she saved herself, because the most powerful language in the world isn't spoken in boardrooms or courts or palaces. It's spoken in kitchens, over rice, and with people who argue about grain length and plant trees that shouldn't grow and leave the light on for each other. It's the language of belonging, and Noor, after 28 years of translating everyone else's words, had finally found her own. If this story moved you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories that bring the drama of real life straight to your screen. Turn on notifications so you never miss a twist. And tell us, would you have stepped into the path of the most dangerous man in the room, armed with nothing but a language he'd forgotten? Let us know in the comments below.